All right, ethnicities. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is difference between ethnicity, race, nationality, or I should have said ethnicity, nationality, race, but we'll get in. No, I like ethnicity, race, nationality. But we're going to talk about where they come from, all right? Why do ethnicities have distinctive distributions? Basically, migration flows. We've done this before, so it'll be like going over the migration unit again. And I thought of a couple things that I like, I forgot to tell them on migration. All right, might they face conflicts? We talked a little bit at the end of last lecture about when somebody comes and there's a few of them, they're quaint, they're my friend, but then when you get a lot, then people feel overwhelmed and they start blaming everything on the new group. And it can lead to ethnic cleansing. You want to wipe them out because if you get rid of that group, then all of your problems are gone. All right, and genocide would be to kill them all. All right, so people have tried that in every continent, and it's still going on today. We'll talk about where that is happening. When we get to our map lesson, we're really going to talk about hotspots in the world and things that could possibly be on the AP test, but a lot of it will come out in this one. Okay, all right, so ethnicity is basically who you identify with. So like right now we hear on a certain news station, they'll say Mexicans from Guatemala. Well, no, Guatemalans are Guatemalans and Mexicans are Mexicans. Now, they're both a lot of mestizo and they look very similar, but if you call one the other, there might be a little bit of like, no, okay? But I'll make it clearer for you, all right? Call a Mexican a Cuban or a Cuban a Mexican, and it is on like Donkey Kong, okay? They both speak Spanish. All right, a lot of mestizo, mix of Spanish and the Native American, but they have different dance, they have different, different cultural things that make them very distinct. And you're thinking, well, that's stupid. All right, call an Irishman Scottish and call a Scotsman Irish, all right? They look pretty similar to me too, okay? They both speak a form of Gaelic, but they have very distinct ideas about what they are as an ethnicity, all right? Okay, all right, ethnicity and race. So we're talking about, you've got all those tiny little ethnic groups. Race is pretty general. There's white, Caucasian. And that Caucasian, Asian goes back to early 1900s, a sociologist, but it was Caucasoid and whatever, but that's what came out of it. So white is, Caucasian is one, very European. Okay, two, African, all right? Right? And a lot of times kids will write on the test, African Americans from Africa, or they'll write African Americans in Africa. No, okay, we're talking about general black, okay, African black, okay. Three, Asian, okay, and your great grandparents, you probably haven't heard that, but they were obsessed with the yellow man, all right, don't go there anymore, all right. And then the other one is Slavic, which here is Eastern Europe and Russia. And you're like, those guys look white. All right, well, Genghis and Kublai Khan had a lot of love to give, and you'll actually see a more Asian look in their eyes in the Slavic people. All right, and that's race. And you're like, well, what about Hispanic? That's actually a subgroup of Caucasian or white. So we are white. Okay, all right. Ethnic enclaves, you'll see where a group is clustered. We talked about neighborhoods or ethnic cities where they'll come together. And then we're going to look at Brazil, a tremendous amount of slaves brought there from Western Africa, and they weren't all of the same ethnic group in Africa. So they're coming over and bringing language, religion, food, all these different cultural things, mixing with the Portuguese and mixing with the different Native Americans there. So Brazil is just very, very complex.
Charging in. Okay. So you can see, you guys, that I've been putting a lot of work, a lot of effort into my physical appearance just for you. So you're welcome, okay? Mr. Wright touched on a lot of different pieces that I'm going to kind of reiterate, but just kind of to clarify the differences between ethnicity, race, and nationality. And then also just to talk about, like, why does ethnicity follow religion? So ethnicity and religion, they're actually very, very closely related. So our ethnicity has to do with our culture, our ancestry. It has to do with your tribe. Who are your people? what is your culture, what is your tradition, it has to do with language, okay? And a lot of that stuff is intermixed into your ethnicity. But ethnicity is traced back to a people group, and it's also a place. Now, race, like Mr. Wright said, it's your hair color, your eye color, your skin color, right? And you guys always like to say, like, oh, that's so racist, okay? I don't know if you know what that means, okay? So many people say, God, that's so racist. And someone, you're like, what? I just said the word Mexican. That's not racist, okay? Well, racist is the belief that a race has certain traits or certain abilities because they are that race, all right? So you think that certain people are better at something because they're a certain race, or worse at something because they're a certain race, okay? So race, ethnicity, nationality has to do with a country, affiliation to a country. And geographers like to differentiate between ethnicity and nationality. So Mr. Wright, in his write-up, I was reading it earlier, and it says that geographers like to distinguish between Russians and Russian Jews, okay? So Russian Jews would be like a whole separate ethnicity, okay? All right. Former President Barack Obama. This is a good example of how complex this issue can be, okay? So his mom has English roots, like ties to England, but she's actually born in Kansas, okay? And she's obviously white. His dad is from Kenya, from the Luo tribe, which is like a very large tribe in Kenya. And his stepdad is from Yogyakarta, Indonesia, okay? Now, President Obama, so he has all of these various ethnicities that he identifies with, but his race, what he identifies with most there, is black, okay, or African American. Okay, so we're going to talk about the distributions of various ethnicities within the United States. You can see the largest is Hispanic American, and yesterday we talked about religion, and we talked about Catholicism in California. California right now is about 39% Hispanic. And if you trace it back, going colonial on you, I'm going to go all colonial on you guys and talk about Spain and where did Spain settle, right? California, New Mexico, Arizona, all of that area used to belong to Mexico, and Mexico settled by Spain. Well, what were the Spanish trying to do? They were converting people to Catholicism, okay? So we're going to talk about unique distributions. Now, he also mentioned the difference is Hispanic American is very large, okay? So you could be Cuban, you could be Puerto Rican, right? You could be Venezuelan, or you could be Mexican. There's a lot of different variations within that, and so we'll talk about some of those variations. African American, it used to be that they didn't have a lot of ways of tracking where exactly you're from, but if you think about African American now with things like 23andMe, we could actually find out, well, were you from Mali, okay, or are you from Tanzania, okay? Which tribe were you part of historically? And then Asian American, that's a really, really large group of people, right? I mean, Hamza, Isa, those guys, they're Asian American, right? From Southwest Asia, okay? And then the Rohan, okay, he's from the Philippines, also from Asia, okay? So you could be an Asian who has Muslim roots, you could be an Asian who has Hindu roots, okay?
You forgot Solhe.
And Solhe, where is he from in Asia?
Palestine.
Palestine, all right, okay. I don't know why I'm doing that, but...
That's East Asia.
Oh, different Asia.
Okay, so I'm going to pull the U.S. map up here. While we're North America, got Canada and Mexico in there too, and the Caribbean. All right, don't fly up on me. Okay, so you can see here on the left, people have a Hispanic descent, huge chunk coming from Mexico. We really have liked their labor over the last century. All right, they're farmers like us. They get it. All right, I'm sorry, El Salvadorians, great restaurants. I love their restaurants. All right. But they can't farm like people from Mexico because it's too wet down there. They just don't have that farming background. So a huge force coming up here from Mexico, and it's very close. Working in Texas and California mainly, and then all of the other areas. And then you can see here a big chunk from Puerto Rico, all right, down here, and they are going to New York, yes.
Spatial connection.
Oh, perfect, okay. So we've got proximity, all right, it's close here. Puerto Ricans, it's easy to get to New York. Somebody went, and then through chain migration, they started bringing in, the brothers and sisters and cousins, and bam. And what's fascinating, I wrote up about Harlem was actually first settled by Jews coming to America, and then they moved on out of that neighborhood when they became more prosperous. African Americans came from the South, they moved into that neighborhood that had been abandoned by the Jews. And then now when you go to Harlem, you're like, dang, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans here. Well, as African Americans have moved on out of the neighborhood, you see Puerto Ricans coming in. So Harlem's pretty cool because you see synagogues, you see then all these African American history, things like the Apollo that you've heard about, but then you start seeing Puerto Rican shops and whatnot. All right, also what's big in New York is Dominicans. They're coming up from the Dominican Republic and going to New York. And one thing that I noticed there but didn't get until I was reading the Spanish 2 textbook, I was like, Dominicans have a lot of barber shops. Well, there's one particular area by Columbia University, just north of it, where it's a Dominican neighborhood, and their big thing is cutting hair. So New Yorkers come from all over to get their hair cut in this one neighborhood.
Big Papi.
Okay. Oh, okay. But he's up in Boston.
Yeah, but he's Dominican.
Yeah. All right, he's Dominican. All right. We can see Cuba. They came from Cuba to Miami, and Miami is still the politics of South Florida. You have to please the Cubans who are angry with the communist takeover and want their land back. All right, so that's a big influence in Florida politics. And then you can see people are coming from Central America and other Caribbean countries and a few South America. On the Asian side, you can see that we have people coming from what we're used to. In California, we see people from China, especially in San Francisco, and if you go to Seattle and Vancouver, you'll see quite a bit in Los Angeles. We're very used to the Philippines. First, they came as farm workers, originally, but now you see them coming as medical workers, all right? Software designers from India, they're coming and taking those jobs that you need calculus for, okay? You can have those jobs, but when we're not taking them, they're coming in. And then we had a big Vietnamese refugee population, and we get that because a lot settled in San Jose, Stockton was one of the areas that they were put in. All right, and then going back to the 1800s, we have Japanese coming in, and they started out, believe it or not, as farmers, but now they're doctors, lawyers, engineers. All right, same thing with Korea. People were coming over after the Korean War in the 1950s, starting out at very menial jobs, but now you see them in high professions. 2 minutes? Okay, all righty. Okay, so the census can make a lot of people angry. I like to have fun with it. Do you consider yourself African American, Black? Okay, then go for it. All right. Oops, one too many. Okay. All right. But you have parents of Japanese heritage? Put it down. Okay. Everybody's saying that you have to get pigeonholed into one box. No, you don't. All right. Do you want to be a mixed up oatmeal, or do you want to be a salad? Okay. Be the salad. It's just. Oh, I see people of my generation get really worked up about this, and I just don't see the big deal. But check the boxes you want, okay? All right, now the first one, as I mentioned, we're very accustomed to seeing a lot of Latin Americans in the Southwest because of proximity, okay? And because of a huge labor need, and President Trump just announced that they are essential to work in the food industry, all right? So I was really excited about that, okay?